Hi everyone, Tom Rogers History here. I thought I'd do this because I've just spent 12 minutes on Periscope talking without sound to no one, and then I re-recorded a video on Periscope where you could only see my chest, my head was not visible. Now, some people might have enjoyed that, but I'm guessing they probably wouldn't. It may have been a waste of their existence. So I thought I'd record this on YouTube just because then I haven't wasted like an hour trying to create a 5-minute video. So here it is. What I was going to say on Periscope, I was going to share some things that I've been doing in the classroom this week, and then I was going to talk very briefly about my TES article for this week, which I think is a really interesting one on this thing called reverse suspensions. So in 2 minutes, I'm going to try and round up the teaching and learning ideas, 3 teaching and learning ideas I've used this week that I think are great. The first one is on my Twitter from today. It was actually stolen from Dylan William. It's an ASL Starter. You put a PowerPoint on the board, you put 10 facts on one side of the slide, and then you put 10 dates or linked facts on the other side of the slide. You number the ones on the left, you letter the ones on the right, and you ask students to connect the letter to the relevant number. They do that in 2 minutes, and then you correct it. Really nice starter, only takes about 3-4 minutes to put together as a teacher, and it's just on prior learning, it's just on what they did the previous lesson. So that's one I've used this week, and I just tweeted that out today, so you can see an example there on the Cold War that I've done on my Twitter feed today. The second one that I used this week is one from Paul Guinness, the late great Paul Guinness. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, but a fantastic inspiration for me as a teacher, and I know for others like Russell Tarr and various other people in the history community who said that Paul Guinness's book has inspired them. It certainly inspired me. The activity is quick on the draw, and I've used it to get 2 jobs. I've used it in 2 interview lessons that have been successful. It's a really nice activity. It creates a great atmosphere in the classroom. All you need is a set of questions, and usually I go for between 10 and 15 questions. You need content on a sheet of paper, and it should be content that is not that easy for the students to find or identify, so it can't be like a list of bullet points. I mean, differentiated it could be for certain students in the class, but generally speaking, it should be a big sheet with lots of information that's quite difficult to find. You then put the students into groups of 3, 2, 3 or 4. I normally go for a 2 or 3. They each in their groups have a pack of questions that's colour-coded. So for example, group 1 would have purple slips, group 2 would have green slips, group 3 would have red slips, and so on. They've got the same questions on each set of slips, but they're cut up. The questions are cut up. So one person from each group comes to the front to get the first question at random. They go back to their group, they try and find the answer, they write the answer on a piece of paper, they bring that answer to you at the front, you check it, and then they can take another question. And this goes on in a cycle until hopefully all the groups have completed the questions. Great competition, boys love it because it involves competition, but it also, there's different roles to play. So you have readers, runners, writers, you know, it's a really cool activity, and people are out of their seats creating a really good kind of atmosphere in the classroom. So that's the second thing I've done this week, and what I did it on was the causes of the Civil War. If you want that resource, just get in touch and I will send it to you, the questions and the resource that I use, which is actually from a textbook, but I've got the scan of it, probably copyright, so I shouldn't say that in this video. But if you want the copyrighted image, I'm sure you can find it somewhere. The third thing I've used, and I need to thank Daniel Guiney on Twitter for this, is a Cold War bingo board, and he actually made a massive bingo board, so it had about 100 factors on it. The students had to get 8 across or 8 down, and it was just reading out the definitions. Some of them were numbers, so it was like, you know, how many Russians died in the Second World War, and the number was like, I think 16 million, and then you just said number of Russians who died in the Second World War, and the student would hopefully cross out 16 million. When they got a line, they shouted line. When they got full house, they shouted full house. And, you know, it's just a simple game of bingo, but always works really well, especially if you have a prize, even for year 10. I mean, I was doing it with year 10. They loved it just because there was a prize available. So that was great. And also, they told me I needed to rap if they make up a Cold War rap if they managed to win or something. So it's always fun in activities like that if you come up with a novel prize. Creates a bit more interest. The other thing I was going to mention, so there's 2 activities I've used this week. The third one is one that I use all the time, and I always talk about at Teach Meet. So if you're bored by this, please just switch off right now. But it's something called Spotlight, again from Paul Guinness. You literally just pick one student, you ask them 10 questions, and while they're answering, all the other students have mini whiteboards. They can put a tick, a cross, or a question mark on the whiteboard to say whether that student has got it right or wrong. Instant AFL, instant feedback for the teacher. All the students have to contribute. Great activity. No planning required. You just come up with 10 questions in your head and off you go as a teacher. So that's my teaching and learning ideas that I've been using this week. Hope they're useful. Maybe you can pick something up from those. And again, they're all on my Twitter feed at Rogers History if you want to have a look at those. The other non-ideas related things is in a couple of weeks. I'm quite excited because I'm going to the history conference at the West London Free School, hosted by Louis Everett. Lots of people that I know of on Twitter who will be there, speaking there. Really excited to go there. It's the 25th of February. If you are around in London, maybe check it out because I know tickets are still available for that event. Finally, my TES post for today is on reverse suspension. So if you're interested in classroom management, what schools are doing with regards to classroom management, well worth a look. Basically, it's schools in West Virginia in the United States who are trialling this method of, instead of sending students home or who are excluded, they invite the parents in with the child for 2 days. So they actually shadow them in lessons. Now, obviously, the key positives for that are it's a deterrent for the student because no one wants their mummy or daddy with them in school. It's going to allow the parent to see what the teachers are doing, and quite often that will be a shock to parents because even though they went to school maybe in the 80s, maybe in the 90s, maybe their view of what teachers actually do is slightly skewed. So by being there with the student, they will see exactly what's going on in lessons that perhaps they think it's, from what the student says to them, they might think it's boring or teachers aren't doing a good job, and then suddenly they go there and that opinion suddenly changes. So I think in that sense that's great as well. I think the only problem is this is something flagged up by Deborah Kidd in the article, is the kind of humiliation or the kickback from the parents on that. Some of them will have to take time off work. Will they be able to afford it? Schools would have to maybe get DBS checks, lots of administration. But I thought it was an interesting idea because in this particular school they managed to reduce exclusions by 50% and behaviour incidents by a third across the school. I think 30 schools are trialling it at the moment, so it's an idea that's growing, that's gaining traction. So if you want to check out my article, again, it's my pinned tweet on my Twitter page if you want to have a look at that, at Rogers History. Please feel free to comment on the YouTube links at the bottom. Hope you've enjoyed this video. See you soon.